as water to the thirsty.
Good morning. How's everyone doing today? Well, this morning, James is going to be sharing his personal testimony, and I've heard some of it personally from him, sitting down and talking with him over at Wildwood, but I am looking forward to hearing the message this morning. Before we begin, let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to gather together here. Thank you for the blessing that we've already had here at Agra, hearing different presentations, Lord, connecting with people, making new friends, maybe doing even some building and some different projects here. Lord, I pray that you would bless the entire day today, and I also pray that your Holy Spirit would rain down on James as he speaks. May Jesus be uplifted through the testimony that you have given him to bear. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be with you again. God, for all the blessings. My mic up. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. So I'm going to be sharing this morning my story of how God led me into the church and how a family outpost changed my life. I was raised in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I've got a picture here of that. It's a nice little town, about 50,000 people on the Mississippi River there south of Minneapolis, a couple hours. I was raised to a Roman Catholic family. I never met a Protestant person, let alone a Seventh-day Adventist, until I was 21 years old. It's a very Catholic city. There were some Lutherans there, but I didn't mingle too much with them. And so, yeah, this was my home church here, Blessed Sacrament. I went through all private school, Catholic grade school, and high school, St. Thomas Aquinas there. My father was a butcher. So you can imagine some of the change that I've been through in my life. You didn't know maybe that I used to be a sausage maker. I used to be a Roman Catholic butcher, sausage maker. Now I'm a vegetarian Seventh-day Adventist. So you can imagine quite a change happened in my life. How did all that occur? I still am puzzled how God led me here. it was quite a miracle and chain of events that took place. God was clearly intervening in numerous ways with me and my friend. I came into church with a buddy, and and I want to share it because I think it's relative to our convention here on agriculture and Outpost ministry, which we talked about yesterday. And as I share my story, I hope maybe somebody will catch a vision of how God may use you to lead somebody and use your country properties to lead somebody to Christ. So, I didn't have too much direction, really, or big aspirations in high school. I was not a very religious person. While I was an altar boy in grade school, and my family is very faithful going to church. We always went to church. Went through confession and all of that. Was taught religious classes always. But as soon as I got my driver's license, and I was kind of more free, and I was out partying, drinking and getting into drugs and partying and so forth. And I didn't want to get up early and go to church on Sunday morning. My parents let me sleep in, and then I would say I would go to this 3:15 service, but I would just drive bulletin, go smoke pot with some friends, later come home and put the bulletin on the counter and say that I was at church. So I was not religiously interested. I would even mock religious teachers in school, and I feel really bad about that. I've had to make a lot of apologies in my life. So, upon graduation, I was just open, looking to explore the world and what I should be doing. I went off to University of Wisconsin in Menominee, and I didn't have too much clear direction of what I was pursuing there. Probably engineering. I was taking calculus classes. I was more mathematically inclined, but I wasn't that interested in what I was studying there. But I did get into. Several of my friends were kind of more interested in getting into Eastern philosophies and so forth. And I started to hang out with quite a bit more hippie crowds and started to dabble in psychedelics, LSD and mushrooms and so forth. Going to different psychedelic concerts and hanging out with a lot of these people at the college, and then traveling kind of different parts of the U.S. to go to these shows and hanging out in these parking lots. And I was, intrigued by it all because it was something I had never experienced before. I was just very open-minded. I didn't know what was truth or what, so I was just an open seeker. And and I definitely ran into something that seemed very powerful and kind of attractive, and something I didn't understand. So I started studying quite a bit into like Eastern philosophies and so forth. And the whole counterculture movement and psychedelics and everything. That was a lot more interesting to me than my economics class in college and literature and everything. So I would do my work and so forth, and I did well in school. But I did drugs every day in college, and obviously could have done a lot better. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, to be honest with you. And so at the end of a year at university, I decided I wanted to follow this band around, so I started going around the U.S. just to having fun, going to different concerts and so forth, and then working different jobs. And I just wanted to travel, and I just wanted to kind of see where my life would lead and what I should be doing. So I was really in darkness. I don't have many pictures, thankfully, of this period of my life, but I did find one. Just for some perspective here, this is me at a club in Hawaii with this guy who's Merle Saunders. He was a jazz musician. So I was doing this kind of hippie lifestyle basically, and one of my friends that I quite looked up to, he was a really good musician. So we started playing music, and we actually rented a place in the country. It was a geodesic dome with no running water in it. There was a well outside. It was very rustic living. So we were out there just camping out in this dome and having parties out there and studying into all this stuff. I was into astrology and drawing up birth charts and taking drugs and doing music and having people out and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of weird stuff. Well, anyway, this friend of mine, he took off to follow this band to Europe. So, I didn't go along because I think I was working at the time, and well, I guess I wanted to be responsible, so I kept my job. And my friend went off to Europe, and back then, this was in the 90s, we didn't have really communication, so I didn't know what he was doing. He was gone 3 months. Well, I was back in the city at the time, and I remember the day that he returned because I was in my friend's apartment playing video games, smoking some pot, which was daily habit for us. And in comes my friend. Now, my friend, he had long hair. He had kind of dreadlocks. His hair was way down to his waist. He was a real hippie, more than me. And it took him, I don't know, he probably didn't wash his hair for quite a long time to be able to get those dreadlocks together. And so that was kind of his identity. And he was always a bit of an extremist. In high school, he was big into heavy metal. And that was just the love of his life, and he got into playing guitar. He slept with his guitar. He was just consumed with guitar, and he became very, very good at it. But then he went to college, and I don't know, suddenly the light switched, and he wanted to be this Republican businessman. So he had a briefcase, and he would wear a suit jacket and go to class. He'd open up his briefcase. The guy was very smart. He was a straight-A student there at University of Wisconsin in Madison. Well, then he tried drugs, and then he became this hippie. So he goes from this heavy metal kid to this Republican business kid student, and then now he's this hippie guy. Okay. Well, now he comes into my friend's apartment, and we didn't even know he was in town. He just opens up the door, and there's this light beaming behind him, and he's just standing there, and his dreadlocks are cut off, and he's holding a King James Bible in his hand. Now, I don't know if you can imagine the thought that went through my head, but the first thought in my head was, oh no. My friend has finally lost his mind. I mean, I know he was pretty crazy, and he would take large doses of LSD, and he was a bit different and everything, but now this was the worst. This is just the extreme. He must have taken too much LSD. Now he thinks he's a Christian, and he's got this Bible in his hand. He must have lost his mind in Europe. That was the first thought that came into my mind. And he's just kind of staring at us, and it was a bit awkward. We're all just looking at him. We're like, without even acknowledging the elephant in the room, I was like, how are the concerts? And he's like, oh, concerts? Yeah. Well, I went to one. It was fine. But then I had this experience, and I ended up on this organic farm in Italy. And, to get there, how he got there was he went to a vegetarian restaurant. See, there was a chain of vegetarian restaurants in Europe, and it was a chain that was started by OCI. It was Country Life, and the idea was that this franchise Country Life restaurants would help promote country living to people that are in the city and the health message and so forth. And so my friend was traveling through Basel, Switzerland. He was hungry, and so he found this restaurant and went in to eat there. Now, it's good that he was there, because I can tell you, I would have never gone to that restaurant. I was not a vegetarian by any stretch of the imagination. But my friend's father was the manager of the only health food store in La Crosse, and his dad used to be kind of hippie in the 70s and had settled down in La Crosse and raised his family and was working at this health food store. He was mostly a vegetarian, and so my friend was mostly vegetarian, and he was, a lot of Eastern philosophies and hippies and so forth are very attentive to that, and he was more than I was, so he went to the restaurant, and there he met somebody. Well, that man was a missionary who had spent a little time at Wildwood. He was from Spain originally and had married a girl from Switzerland, and they were there. He had worked in Paris at Country Life. There was a Country Life in London, in Paris, Basel, and in Prague, as well as several in the United States. And so this man was working at the Country Life there in Basel. He was a cook. And, while he was good at cooking and enjoyed cooking, but he had a soul-winning mentality. And when you're in the kitchen cooking all day, there's not a whole lot of people to witness to, you understand. And this is a very social person. And so he was, I think, a little frustrated of, the restrictions because, plus restaurant work, if you've done it, it's busy, people are in and people are out, and there's not a whole lot of time to make long-lasting relationships or discussions because there's a big rush, and you're running food out and you're taking care of everybody, and then boom, they're all gone. Well, thankfully, I think he said that day my friend had showed up a bit late. It was after the rush, and this man's name was Jose, and Jose, he related to me later that day he was really kind of burdened, a little bit down about being stuck in the kitchen all the time, and he begged God to give him a soul to witness to. Lord, please give me somebody to witness to today. And so when my friend came walking in the door, this hippie American kid, after hours or after the busyness, he knew right away. He says, this is my guy. So he went right up to him and he said, hey, my friend, how are you? Welcome. Can I sit with you? Oh, yeah, my friend, sure. He was alone, traveling alone. He just had his guitar on his back and a backpack, and he was just traveling like that. And so they sat together, and Jose shared with him about his experience and how he used to, be a hippie also in the 70s and understood the kind of things he was into, but God had changed his life, and he had become a Christian, and that God had really blessed his life in that. And he started talking about the health message and country living and vegetarian food, and they got really along on all of that. And to be honest, my friend had never met anybody like that before. It was a very never heard of a Seventh-day Adventist for sure. My friend was not a Roman Catholic. He didn't go to any church or anything. They were not Christians. So anyway, I mentioned yesterday about the risk that you need to take sometimes for souls. And I don't know what led this family that had a 3-year-old daughter, I believe, at the time. But Jose asked my friend, where are you staying tonight? And my friend said, well, I don't have any plans, but I'm looking for a youth hostel. Do you know any hostel around that I could stay at? And he said, you know what? Why don't you stay at my house? Okay, this guy's clearly on drugs. I mean, maybe not at the time, but he was into drugs. Okay, he was just a kid off the street. He was, I don't know how old he would have been then, maybe 22 or 23 years old. That was a risk that he took. He brought him into his house with his young wife and young daughter. Well, they had many conversations, and you know what? They became lifelong friends. And it made a big impact in my friend's life. And Jose said, well, you know what? I think someplace that would be really good for you and a place that you would really enjoy is this farm that I visited once in Italy. There's this family that moved out of the city, bought a beautiful piece of property, and they're doing sustainable living and organic agriculture in the hills of Italy. It's a beautiful place. He said, this is just amazing. You really should go there. And I think they would welcome you to come there and volunteer on their farm. My friend's like, oh, really? Now, my friend, his last name is Menolacino. He's Italian blood. He studied Italian in college and was planning to go to Italy. And the idea of even living with a family, it was just so attractive. He says, oh, I would definitely want to do that. So he got the phone number of this man, Alberto Olavucci. And Alberto met him at the train station and took him up to his Outpost property. And, it changed my friend's life. So here was my friend now telling us in the apartment that day that he found this farm and he lived on it for the whole rest of his time, and he had this great experience. And basically I've been farming for 3 months. And now I was frustrated at that answer because I thought he must be the dumbest person in the world, because you're in Europe. There's a lot of things to see in Europe. Not only that, you went to see this band, which we really, were entranced by, and I just couldn't believe, La Crosse is surrounded with farmland. We had a farm, and he lived in farm country. You could go farming in Wisconsin. Why are you in Europe farming? I just could not put it together in my head. He said, well, I just love the people, and I like the way they were living, and they were very spiritual. And I was like, okay, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. I was like, spiritual. So what are these? These are hippies, or who are these? No, they're Christians. I was like, Christians? Spiritual? Yeah, they're spiritual people. Spiritual Christians? Yeah. It's like, I don't know what does that look like? Who are these kind of people? They Catholics? No, they're not Catholics. And then he told me the name of the church in Italian. He didn't even know that there were Seventh-day Adventists in the United States. I was like, what is that? He says, well, I think it translates Seven-day Adventist. I was like, what does that mean? That's a Christian church? He says, yeah. He thought it was Italian. We thought it was an Italian church, okay? Like there was just a group in Italy that were into that. No, they're in the United States too. Oh, okay, really? I'm like, well, I don't know. I never heard of them. What is that? Well, they're into health and stuff. What does that mean, Seven-day Adventist? He's like, well, they go to church on Saturday. I was like, why would they do that? That's kind of weird. Go to church on Saturday? Why would they do that? He says, well, because Jesus went to church on Saturday. I said, you know what? That's a really good reason. I never thought of that before. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. What does Adventist mean? He's like, well, they believe in Jesus' second coming. I says, oh, yeah, Advent. Okay, Advent, the Christmas time, you see Advent, the first coming. I was like, okay, I never really thought about the second coming of Jesus before. I was like, all right, well, I don't really care what religion they're with, but they're living in the country sustainably, and they're spiritual people getting in touch with nature. And I was reading a book at the time that was talking about some of these guys that were in the original kind of counterculture movement, LSD movement, and so forth. And they had one man went to India seeking some guru, and then he ended up writing this book of this experience where he stopped using psychedelics and using meditation, getting this disciplined lifestyle and transcendental meditations and so forth. And I was reading about this. Okay, and then I look up, and he's telling me the story of these people that don't do drugs, living in this like simple life, and are spiritual people, and it just caught my attention. I just thought, well, that's interesting. I might like to try something like that. He says, yeah, no, I want to know who here wants to go back with me, because I definitely want to go back. My visa ran out, but I'm planning to return. All my other friends were like, oh, no, I mean, thanks, but no thanks. But I was like, I'll go. And then everyone's like, huh? And my friend's like, oh, great. James will go. Why I said I will go? It was this book. I don't know. It was just the right. I don't really know. I surely didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was going to Europe, and I was going to check out this farm, and it was just going to be an experience. So I got my backpack, and we hitchhiked to Europe. We hitchhiked to a train station in Chicago, and then took a train to New York, and then went downtown Manhattan to an office and got a voucher where we could hitchhike at JFK Airport. Back then, there was no security. You just walked right in, right up to the gates. And I had this voucher, and we're like, I'm looking to go to Europe. You guys going? Where are you guys going? This flight's going to Paris. You guys got any seats? Nah, it's booked. All right, okay, let us know. And then we'd go walking around the gates, hitchhiking, looking for an open seat. Different era. Right. It's amazing to think about that now. This is pre, 9/11, I guess. So anyway, all these stewardesses got to know us that day. We were there several hours, and then one of this lady goes, "Hey, you guys, I got a flight for you." Like, all right, where are we going? We're going to Luxembourg. And I was kind of like, where's that now? My friend's like, it's next to Germany. I was like, oh, Germany? I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, okay, we'll go. So we jump on this plane, and we get landed in Luxembourg. And then we're just like getting out, looking around Luxembourg. We didn't know where to go. So we just get down to the train station. We're like, we want to go to Italy. So we get a ticket to Italy. Alberto comes and picks us up. Now I'm on this family farm. And I've got a picture of it here. Now these people, this mother and her son purchased this country property, a very old house. This house was built in the 13th century, okay? Older than any building in this country. And it was just a mother and her son. And they bought a house with 12 rooms, okay? A big place, a lot to take care of, and very rustic. It didn't have central heating and all that, and it gets cold there. They have little fireplaces in each room. And they were living a very natural way of life. They had an old-fashioned loom in the basement, and they would have classes, and this grandma would help teach how to work with this loom. Alberto would teach classes on seed saving and organic agriculture. There were groups that would come out. He would teach them. I think one was like on how to build a rock ledge or something, rock wall. and all kinds of classes. And on Sunday, they had a restaurant, because this mother was a chef, an Italian chef. She had worked at a restaurant in town, and now she had groups that would come up on Sundays. And so this was their Outpost ministry. And they had a beautiful, beautiful property. I think I have a couple more pictures of it. It was right up in the hills. This was like the backdrop. This was their farmland there. They had olive trees. I don't have too many pictures of it. This is like the picture from the house. This is me visiting there just a few years ago, just so you can kind of see the house. Very rustic, very historic house, and very if you know anything about Catholicism, St. Francis of Assisi, one of the most well-known saints, his monastery was in walking distance. You could just walk down the road to his monastery. So it was a very amazing place to be. Anyway, so there I was on this property, and I met this man, Alberto, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, why have you come here?" That was the first night. And his English was not so, he spoke a little English, but I think he just said, "Why are you here?" You know, honestly, I remember not knowing how to answer that question. I had no idea why I was on his farm, really. I just said, "I don't really know, but I'm willing to work, and, if it's okay, I'd like to see how you guys live." You know, he's like, "Okay, you can stay here." I mean, here's these, they would try to evaluate, I guess, these, because random people would show up at their property. They were there was this World Organization for Organic Farmers, WOOF, and then you had these woofers that would go around the world and volunteer on different farms, and they were kind of a part of that in a way. So WOOF, you can go on a website and look at thousands of family farms around the world. And the deal is you can go there and volunteer for room and board. You're not going to get paid. You're just going to go and volunteer for room and board. And that's kind of what they were doing. They would just let random people come and volunteer. There was a little bit of a screening process. Are you on drugs? Are you using drugs? I said, "Hey, I'm not going to use any drugs here. I normally use drugs, but I didn't come here to bring my lifestyle here." I was reading this book. I was reading this book of this guy that was sleeping on a wooden bed, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, doing hours of yoga, eating simple food, this very disciplined lifestyle. So I just kind of had this in my mind. I'm like, I'm going to come and live this very disciplined lifestyle, you know. And I was like, no, I came to learn from you and to live how you live. And, you know, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it. And I know how to work. My dad had raised me to be I had to be a hard worker with him. He was a hard worker. He gave me the hardest jobs at the butcher shop. I was definitely not the owner's son that was spoiled. He had me cleaning out gut barrels, which is the worst job. So, you know, you kill an animal and all the guts get dropped into a big metal 50-gallon barrel and then wheeled up into a garage where there might be about 70 of those barrels, stinking, full of flies and maggots, especially in the summertime, and then a rendering company comes and picks those up and dumps them onto the truck, and then my job was to clean out those gut barrels. That was not a very good job, I can tell you. And I was only probably about 95 pounds at the time, trying to wheel these metal barrels down to the kill floor, spray them all out, rinse them out, scrub each one with soap and water. So anyway, ever since then, every other job I've had in my life has been much easier. So young people, if you have a hard job, be thankful for that. It's good character development. So, I was ready to work. So I said, "All right, what do you want? What are we going to do?" So we started digging potatoes and doing different work. I was there in the fall. I think I arrived in early September. So we were harvesting olives, which was a great experience. And I was just working on the farm. And, you know, I stopped drinking, stopped smoking, stopped any kind of drugs or anything. And then I'm eating much better than I've ever eaten in my life. And the food there was all from scratch. They grew their own wheat, spelt, corn. They ground their own flour. Their neighbor would cold press their olives for their own fresh olive oil. They got honey locally. They got some milk from a local farmer, would make their own homemade cheese, fresh cheese, and would make fresh bread and piadinas, and they'd sun-dry their own tomatoes and preserve all this food. And all the pasta was even made by hand, fresh sauces with 30 different varieties of tomatoes and all these fresh herbs and everything. Here's this Italian roly-poly grandma chef that was just rolling out all this food, putting out the most amazing meals I've ever had. I mean, it was just the best introduction you could possibly have to a vegetarian diet. You know, I mean, fresh fruits. They had just beautiful fruits, persimmons and figs and all kinds of trees on their property. And, well, the food was outstanding. I definitely could not complain about it. I was just amazed by it, really. I'd never eaten food like that. And so, you know what? In about a week, I would say my energy levels just started to skyrocket. I was just full of energy. You know, I didn't realize I had probably smoked pot every day for maybe 3 or 4 years, and I didn't. I guess I forgot how it felt to feel healthy or something. But you get kind of dragged down energy-wise with pot, and I was just bursting with energy, way too much energy. I was literally bouncing, and I was like, all right, give me some work to do. I needed to channel my energy into something. And so I'd come down out to the farm, say, all right, Alberto, what are we going to do today? And Alberto is such a calm guy. He'd just kind of look, and he'd say, well, today we will dig. I'm like, potatoes. I was like, okay, where's the shovel? Okay, where am I going? You know, I'm just like, I was in a lifestyle program myself. I was a patient. I was a little hyperactive, and I just started working on the farm. And this guy Alberto, such a nice guy, just a great Christian guy, very wise with country living and seed saving. He had heirloom seeds from. He had a sharp freezer, and he started a seed-saving corporation, and quite well known. And you know, he would speak at different conventions in Italy. So he was well known in those circles, but those are not Adventist circles. But he was well known in those kind of circles. Some Adventists from time to time would come out to the Outpost farm, and these ladies would come in with high heels, trying to walk on stone walkways. And, ooh, wow, what is this and what is that? I was like, who are these? Oh, these are the Adventists. I was like, oh, Adventist, okay. And then these other kind of hippie crowds would come through, really into earth and everything and just wanting to know all this stuff. And so they were really an Outpost ministry. They were there for ministry. They were not there for themselves. But they were getting the blessing, obviously. But they would have all kinds of groups out there regularly. And different people. So I met some pretty unique people that worked with us on the farm. But there was me and my friend working on the farm. Well, the deal was, before we'd start farming, we would have a little reading before we go. So he'd open the Bible and read a little bit about the life of Christ. And then he'd open up this other book, and he'd read a couple pages from that. That book was called Desire of Ages. And I thought, oh, man, I've never heard anyone talk about the life of Christ like this guy. You know, it's just very interesting to me. My mind was just really alert, switched on, and I was just really keyed in to these lessons every morning, and I was just amazed by it. And I thought, yeah, maybe there really is something in Christianity, but obviously maybe the Christian world is missing it of somehow. But I'm open-minded, learn from Christ and so forth. So I'm just listening. And one morning, he's just read this most powerful chapter in the Desire of Ages. We'd go through the Gospel of Mark and then read a bit from Desire of Ages. And so I remember thinking, wow, that book is just incredible. And I turned to my friend. I was like, man, who wrote that book? I mean, I don't understand who could write those things. And they seem like they know what's going on in people's minds during the days of Christ. Where are they coming up with all of this? He said, oh, I never told you, but they think that author is a prophet. I said, really? I said, wow. I said, well, I can see why they think that. Yeah, definitely. I was like, yeah, I think so too. You know, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just like, sure. There's no way you could have weirded me out. It was just impossible, the kind of stuff I was into. So, you know, going to church on Saturday and having a prophet, that was not an obstacle for me. I was not tied to any doctrines or, you know, Catholicism was way in the back of my mind. So I was interested. I was curious. So Alberto could see that. So he went to town and he searched for an English Bible, and he came back and gave it to me. I was, oh, that's very nice of you. And he gave time in the afternoon for reading. We wouldn't work all day. We'd mostly work half the day or 2/3 the day. And I'd go hiking up into these hills and just would read. I was like, you know what? I'm going to read the New Testament. So I just read it from Matthew to Revelation. Obviously Revelation, I didn't know any of that. It was way too much. But when going through Matthew was very powerful, and there was a moment there after several weeks of being there, over a month, maybe halfway through my experience there. I remember reading through Romans, and I was up overlooking this Italian landscape, such a beautiful place there, so peaceful, reading through Romans, and I think I was, reading about the wrestle between the flesh and the spirit and the carnal nature, and these things were really resonating with me. And suddenly I started to realize the gospel. I had sat through religion class for 12 years, and I never understood anything about the gospel. And here it started to dawn on me, like I'm a sinner with this corrupt nature, carnal nature, and I need Christ can actually deliver me from that. These were new concepts. I had never heard anyone speak of that before. And suddenly I read, I don't remember what verse it was. I don't know if, I know chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I know that had a huge impact on me. I don't remember exactly what verse it was I was reading, somewhere in chapter 8 or maybe that 12, but suddenly it hit me like a bolt of lightning. This is the inspired word of God. That thought came to my mind. And I realized the Bible was inspired. I never saw it that way. I never saw it different from the Bhagavad Gita or any other book. But suddenly I realized, no, it is different. God is speaking to me through these words, and I'm understanding the purpose of Christ and what he wants to do in my life, and I almost fell over. But honestly, I felt there was a mix of excitement and fear. I was excited on one hand and terrified on the other. Because I know what I thought when I saw my friend wanted to be a Christian. I thought he was nuts, as well as all my other friends. I thought, okay, so am I going to be nuts too? I'm going to be, to be a Christian. A Christian? Oh man, it was just a hard pill to swallow. Because of all my preconceived ideas of Christianity, the Catholicism was just dry and ceremonial and formal, and I couldn't stand it. I hated Catholicism, and I looked at television to look at these Protestants doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I thought, wow, these Protestants are wild people. And I don't know that didn't make sense to me either. So I didn't know what Christianity really should look like or what it was. All I knew was Alberto. I thought, well, Alberto's a good guy. I really thought, oh man, I think it's in the beginning of John. Is it with Nathaniel, where he said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Honestly, my thought was, can anything good come out of Christianity? That's where my mind was. But here I am, confronted with Christ, and Christ is asking me to give me his heart and become a follower of him. It was terrifying. I would have to change all my friends. My family would be not happy, I'm quite sure of that. I was like, this would change my life. I don't even know what it would make of my life. I don't even know what I would do with my life. I just looked at my friend, and he's like, well, me too, I was like, well, I guess it's us, man. So, anyway, I was like, well, I'm going to call home. So I call home, and I start sharing some thoughts. What do I get? I get screamed at from the other line. My sister curses me out. Oh, it was hard, It was just very hard. And so I thought, yeah, wow, the world is going to hate me, if I give my life to the Lord. It was just very heavy. But that's what I had settled in my mind, that I would be a Christian. I didn't know much about the Adventist church. I was not brought through a series of evangelistic series or Bible studies. I never even touched prophecy. Alberto never talked about any of that. He just talked the gospel and Christ. That's what I needed at the time. But I wasn't grounded. I was a small little plant. And I went back at the end of my stay there after 3 months, back to La Crosse. Now Delson, my friend, he had an opportunity because he kept connection with Jose. They somehow communicated with each other. I had never met Jose before, and Jose decided he wanted to get into agriculture, so he went to this place here, Eden Valley, in the foothills of Colorado. So here's another outpost that was significant in my life, even though I didn't go there. But my friend went there. Jose invited him he kept in touch somehow and said, hey, I'm taking an agriculture course in Colorado, working on the farm. Why don't you come here? So here's my friend travels and stays in Colorado. I didn't really know what he was doing. He just said he was going to Colorado. To be honest, we weren't even really getting along that good at the time. So I was like, I thought he was getting extreme, and I was just by myself in my hometown with all my friends. It was very hard. Where I wanted to see my friends, I missed them. Well, where were they? Like I said yesterday, they were in the bars. They were at parties. So I went there to be with them. And but it wasn't long after, not like I was witnessing or anything. I was just telling my experience. But soon after, I thought, well, Jesus did turn the water into wine, so I could probably have a drink. And so I got back. I started backsliding from my experience, and I was back drinking. But I was confused. I didn't know what to do with my life. A bit frustrated. Had this amazing experience. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know where to channel it or where to go. So I thought I looked up in a phone book, Adventist Church, and I found. I was like, oh, there is one around here. So I went to go visit it, and I kind of snuck in the back, and I think there was like 7 or 8 older ladies in there, and that was the church. And so I sat in the back, and I was like, oh man, I don't know, I can't do this. So they were all very nice and everything, but I was like, I got to go to the bathroom, and I don't know, I just like jumped out the window or something. I'm not ready to go to church. So I wasn't going to church. I didn't know what to do, and when I was back in the city, started eating the same foods, doing a lot of the same things, listening to a lot of the same music. My spiritual interest it's like it evaporated. It's just like it just, I needed that country environment to raise my spiritual interest. It was just very difficult. Every once in a while I'd try to read from the Bible, and I was like, it's just not making sense to me. I'm not getting anything out of it. So I was frustrated, and then a friend of mine said, hey, I got an idea. I want to go to Alaska. And I just looked at him. I'm like, man, that's the best idea you've had in a while. So I was like, I want to go to Alaska too. Like, why? I don't know. I just want to run. Is really what I wanted to do. So I was like, let's run to the end of the earth. Let's go to Alaska. There's like not a lot of people up there, just a bunch of nature, and we're going to work. Okay, well, let's go work. Let's have an adventure. So we drive 50 hours driving to Anchorage, park our car, get on a flight, land in Cordova with our frame packs, and we're looking for a job. There's 3 fisheries. Go to the first one, we're not hiring. Go to the second one, we're not hiring. I had to fly to get to this place. I'm like, man, this wasn't such a good idea. We were going to be like homeless in Cordova. So the last one, because the fish hadn't really made their run yet. We were a little early. It was May. And so the last one, we begged this lady, like, please hire us. We need a place to stay. So anyway, I worked for 4 months in the fishing industry with a bunch of criminals and alcoholics. And it was a very interesting experience. When the fish came, they came. And we were working 100 hours a week. I remember one week I punched in 110 hours, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and working till midnight, basically, sleeping 4 hours. And then they would give us breaks every 2 hours. Literally, wherever I was, when the whistle blew, I could sit down and sleep within 5 seconds. The whistle, I'd just sit down, put my head down, and sleep immediately. And then it was wake up, and I'd keep going. Drinking coffee all day long, eating snacks and junk food, drinking here and there, overworking, not keeping the Sabbath. I was literally destroying myself. And by the end of 4 months there, I was feeling awful. I had gotten very sick, and I was not feeling good. I was like, it's time to get out of here. The weather started turning bad, wind blowing, the fish were finished. It was like, let's get out of Alaska. It's getting dark and cold. And so we drove down the West Coast, go to San Francisco, parked our car, flew to Hawaii, slept on beaches in Hawaii for like a month. But I was feeling sick in Hawaii, and I went to the clinic. I was like vomiting and no energy, and they said I had mononucleosis. I was like, wow, how did I get that? It was immune system breakdown. I was killing myself the way I was living in Alaska. It took me 3 weeks to recover from that. And the Lord, while I was laying in my tent, with occasional vomiting, the Lord was speaking to me like, what are you doing? Do you remember how you were living in Italy? Why are you doing this? I've shown you a better way. You're stubbornly persisting in your own way. And I was like, yeah, I know. I need to change. But I was rebellious. So anyway, I went back to California, and went to Las Vegas. I was kind of like just testing the world to see if I really hated the world or loved the world. And so I was gambling. I went to concerts and all this stuff, but I was totally dry spiritually. I ended up going back home, didn't know what to do with my life, totally confused. My friend that was in Eden Valley was home visiting, and he told me he was in Tennessee. And he said, hey, you know what, why don't you come down with me? So Jose had got a job offer in Tennessee at OCI headquarters to manage the farm there at a ministry called Stone Cave. And it's pictured here. It's about 40 miles north of Chattanooga. And so I drove down there. I had a few last drinks in the bars with my friends before I drove down to go farming on this hippie commune in Tennessee with these Christian people that don't do drugs. That honestly is what I thought I was doing. I had no perception of really what I was getting myself into. But I walked onto a conservative, mission-minded Seventh-day Adventist Outpost Center ministry. I had a Grateful Dead t-shirt with skeletons on it. I had long hair. They looked at me. They said, how'd you get here? You look kind of strange. Basically, and I looked at them. I was like, well, you guys look kind of strange too. I was like, I don't know. I came here to work on the farm. My buddy's here. And that's where I met Jose. And Jose was such a great mentor for me. Just loved working with him. So we worked on the farm, me and my friend. And anyway, I'm going to make a long story short. So I got back on track, out in the country with Christians, eating good food. My spiritual interest came back right along with it, and I started to read again. And I started to pray. I enjoyed the farm work. This is a picture back from then with Jose and his daughter working a farmer's market that summer down in Chattanooga. I got Bible studies. I started to study the prophecies. I read through the Great Controversy, which was very eye-opening to me. You can imagine as a Roman Catholic. Every family member I have is a Roman Catholic. Reading that book was a shock. And so I decided I was going to give my heart to the Lord completely, and I decided to get baptized. This is a picture of me with Jose and his wife, Anna Marie, and their daughter. That year. This might have been the day I got baptized. I'm not so sure. And I'm it's really special because we've kept in touch over the years and had a chance to work with each other on and off. We're not living in the same part of the world right now, but you know what? He's here, and it's a real blessing. So, Jose, why don't you raise your hand here? Yeah, Jose is right here, and Anna Marie. Yeah, praise God. Thank you for being here, guys. So special. So he's been a lifelong friend, to me. And so, I got just two short stories. I know I'm out of time here, but yeah, I had to go through quite a bit to get baptized. My parents made me go back home and have this interview with the leading Catholic priest who interrogated me, and we got into all kinds of Bible debates and stuff. He told me I was going to go to hell and burn in hell and everything, and so that was kind of a hard experience. And then he tried to encourage me after telling me I was going to burn in hell for what I was doing. He tried to convince me to become a Jesuit, and that he could get me into a Jesuit school, and he offered to pay 4 years of my education to become a Jesuit. So he kind of tried to bribe me to be a Jesuit. It was kind of an interesting experience. But I had just read the Great Controversy, and I looked at the guy. I was like, maybe you're not hearing me right, but I don't want to be a Jesuit. I want to go get baptized as a Seventh-day Adventist and be a missionary, a Bible-believing missionary. And so I came back and I was baptized there at Wildwood, is where Jose and Anna Marie were taking us to church. And so I got studies there. And then, I was back thinking of where to do with my life now. And I was riding this old tractor, this old Ford tractor. The seat was all messed up, didn't have its cushion. It had rusty bolts sticking out of it. So I was kind of standing up usually on it. And I was mowing down this field, bush hogging a field that we didn't use that year, real tall grass. And I was pushing the limits. I was going faster than I should have gone. I was up in like fourth gear, just flying around trying to knock this field down. And well, little did I know there was a pile of lime sitting right in the middle of the field. And I slammed into it without being able to stop, and I got thrown off the tractor and ran over by the back right tire, ran over my head. I had the whole weight of the tractor on my skull. If anyone says I have a hard head, I cannot disagree with them. And then I felt the tractor going over my chest, crushed all my ribs, bruised my lungs, punctured my kidneys. My knee snapped backwards. I hyperextended my leg. I was getting torn to pieces. And then I should have been chopped up into 1,000 pieces, but I got dragged by this tractor. My left boot somehow got hooked by the hydraulic lever, and I was being pulled down this field in fourth gear, bouncing along, pinned underneath. My arm was broken. I could feel the breeze of the blades of the bush hog on the back of my head. I looked back and stared them right in the eyes. They were about 9 inches from my face. As soon as my boot came out, I was going to get my head chopped off. And so that was the end for me. It all would have finished very quick for me. That was 3 weeks after I was baptized. And I was actually thinking what kind of mission work I was going to do. Suddenly, boom, oh, my life's over. Yeah, it all happened really, really fast. So, but, I just had an experience with the Lord, talking with Him. I was thankful for salvation, and I just yielded myself. I said, okay, I'm ready to die. If this is what's the end, then I'm glad I got to know you. And so I felt my foot actually coming out of my boot, and it was almost like the guillotine was on its way down, and I remember yelling out, Jesus, I will see you in heaven. I didn't cry for Him to save me. I had already accepted death. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go to sleep. I just had that Bible study. What happens when you die? You go to sleep. You wake up. You hear the voice of the Lord. I said, okay, I will see you in heaven. So I was just prepared for death. Suddenly, boom, shoom, 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 the tractor stopped. It had veered out of the field and had hit a tree just in time. God planted a tree just in the right place for me. And so, survived that experience by God's grace, and hopped away. I was in this kind of position, and I looked down. There was a stick in front of me with a Y on the top. Right as soon as I pulled myself out from the tractor, I was like, oh, wow, Lord, right there, thank you. It was a crutch for me, because I had to hop like that quite far, maybe a quarter or half a mile to the nearest house, which was OCI headquarters. And anyway, I blew my ACL ligament, and made full recovery. So God is very good. Well, I was already committed to be a missionary, but now even more so. I was like, wow, Lord, you saved my life twice. What do you want me to do? I'll do anything. Anything you want me to do. I'm just here for service. I've walked away. My family was upset. Friends, that was over. So I didn't know anyone hardly in the South, just a few people. And I was like, I'll do anything. Wherever you want me to go, I'll do it. And so the Lord started to lead me, give me some providential leading. And by providence, He led me to this place, Wildwood, which was nearby. Wasn't really thinking to go there. It was last on my list of options, but God took over and gave me a clear providence that He wanted me to go there. And that's where I was studied and trained for mission service, and had lots of opportunities to get involved in God's work. That's where I met my wife years later. This is my family. My wife came as a student there in 2006, and she's from Brazil, and we were married in 2010. We've got 2 daughters, and we are just enjoying ministry in the Lord. It's a blessing to be married to someone that's equally committed to the work as you. And so I'm thankful for God's mercies in my life, and I wanted to share this because, just think, there was the city mission, and it's that Enoch's method of bringing people out to the country. And so bringing people out to that Italian farm, bringing people out to Eden Valley, bringing us down to Tennessee. This is what worked in my life anyway. And I know it will work in others' lives. So let's use our country properties to try to reach souls for Jesus. What do you say? Why don't we stand for prayer? Father, Lord, we want to give thanks to you today for this glorious message, for the beauties of your creation, and for the salvation in Jesus Christ. How privileged we are. But Lord, help us to not hold that blessing to ourselves, but to share it with those that in the Word, and to look for ways to mingle with people in the cities, and to invite them out to our country properties, looking for ways to reach souls. Bless each one here as they've listened to this story, that you may stir their hearts and give them an idea of how they may reach souls for Jesus. Bless the rest of this convention, and bless us in this day, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, everyone.